So Lane Johnson basically spilled the beans yesterday that the 49ers did in fact break the Eagles and reveal the blueprint on how to be the birds of the league this year. Jalen Carter, he was up for Defensive Rookie of the Year last night, but did he actually win? Vic Fangio, how about this? He's actively recruiting former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley to Philadelphia. And Don McNabb, he had one message for new Eagles OC Kellen Moore. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. Well, last night was the NFL Honors Awards ceremony, and let's be honest, the usual suspects basically took home all the prizes that we expected, including Lamar Jackson winning NFL MVP. He got 49 of the 50 votes. Chris McCaffrey, he won the AP Offensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett, he won the Defensive Player of the Year. But for those who remembered how good Jalen Carter was, especially at the beginning of the season, kind of thought maybe he could win Defensive Rookie of the Year, but last night he came in second to Will Anderson Jr. from the Houston Texans. And while it's a little upsetting because Jalen Carter was really good, again, at times, when you compare the two stats like outside D.I. Birds did, Anderson, let's be real, was the better player and definitely more deserving. Jalen Carter, like the rest of the Eagles, basically hit a wall with 8 games to go. I mean, if you remember back to the Rams game, Jalen Carter was absolutely incredible. He was dominating on almost every single snap, and then slowly but surely, either teams figured him out or the Eagles coaches didn't put him in the right positions, probably that one. He just kind of disappeared and wasn't that effective, especially in the playoff game against the Bucs. Here's to hoping the year 2 and brand new Fangio scheme can get Jalen Carter back to being a superstar caliber player versus what he was, again, the final 8 games of the year. Now, speaking of Jones' Cowboys, they hired former Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer to be their defensive coordinator yesterday, and I'll be honest, I don't like giving the Cowboys credit. This is a pretty solid move. I mean, remember Zimmer's defenses in Minnesota were always very, very good. It was his offenses that usually stunk. It's going to be up to Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts to counter the Cowboys next season and maybe not split games for once. I feel like we always split games with Dallas. Can we win both of them and pummel the Cowboys back to the bottom of the NFC East? Our new defensive coach, Vic Fangio, he might have one more rabbit up his sleeve, as Liberty Line reported yesterday that the Eagles have shown interest in former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley as a potential addition to their defensive staff. Let's be real here. Staley's probably the most famous Fangio disciple, working on the Bears staff first as an outside linebacker coach for 2 years before following Vic to Denver. Now, everyone likes to focus on Staley's time as the Chargers head coach, especially one game in particular. Yikes! We forget that the reason Staley got the Chargers job in the first place because he was the Rams DC in 2020, and they were number 1 in points and total yards allowed. I mean, heck, watch this clip of Vic Fangio raving about Brandon Staley when he was hired to be the Chargers head coach on the Chargers YouTube channel a couple of seasons ago.
Well, they're getting an excellent football coach first and foremost. The guy's very knowledgeable about the game, both sides of the ball. He spends a lot of time studying football besides just coaching his position like he did for us here in Chicago. He's always looking at the big picture of football and always looking at the new things, you know, and trying to stay on top of anything that might be developing in the NFL or in the football world for that matter. And he's always done a good job of that.
I've said it many times now, but I want as much experience on the Eagles coaching staff as humanly possible in 2024. We tried 2023 with new, fresh faces who had very little experience. It didn't work out. They couldn't change anything. Give me experience, guys. Even though Brandon Staley, like many people hired on the Eagles coaching staff, have had their bumps, that's why they're no longer head coaches, he's still a very good positional coach, and I think if Philadelphia hires him, can provide a lot of benefit to Fangio's defense. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, you never know which players and celebrities are going to be paid to hop on various Radio Row interviews this week, so naturally, you're going to get fun clips like this of Jordan Mailata making The Rock, geez, look more like the Pebble. Mailata's running mate Lane Johnson, though, was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. He gave a little more insight into exactly what went wrong in Philly last year. Listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as film piles up, and I feel like really after the 49ers game where, you know, it's kind of them dismantling us, I felt like teams kind of piggybacked off that, so I don't know if it was something we were doing with our scheme-wise. Maybe the teams were on to what we were running. But it was a lot more difficult than what it needed to be because you've seen what the offense has been, and then you see that stretch, and it's, you know, what's going on. It's just like you look at the second half of our season, you know, games we should have won, close games, we end up losing the last 6 or 7. So it is what it is, but, you know, when we reflect, a lot of changes are going on in Philly right now. So, you know, I'm excited about that, and I feel, you know, with the nucleus that we do have, I feel like we have a good chance of getting back to where we need to be.
Oh, man. So I guess all those 49er fans who were all over my Twitter DM saying, we broke Philadelphia, we cracked the code, we're the reason you guys stink, might not have been that far off. And honestly, it's really hard to deny. I mean, did you watch Jalen Hurts and company, what they did against the Buffalo Bills? I mean, this game was incredible. How about the Kansas City Chiefs just a few weeks before playing the 49ers, and then all hell broke loose, and the Eagles, after that game, looked like a completely different team. But I think this showcases exactly the real problems in Philadelphia last season. If you can be really good for 11 weeks, and then one team figures you out and puts the blueprint out there, and you have 8 weeks to adjust, and you can't do it like Philadelphia showed us that they couldn't do, it's a coaching problem. It's not a player problem. Sure, the players obviously have some blame, and they were part of the problem, but the coaching staff had a vanilla system that got figured out by a very good football team and a very good coaching staff in San Francisco, and the Eagles basically went, you got us. I mean, we don't know how to fix it, so let's just keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope and pray we can squeak some wins out. I mean, even Britton Covey, he echoed it yesterday when he said there were some miscommunications from coaches to players, there were some pointing fingers from player to player, and they were letting outside voices impact our love for the game and the happiness we had. Now, you hear all this, and I continue to stand by the fact that the head coach is in charge of fixing these problems, squashing the issues from player to player or player to coach, or killing the outside noise, or just coming up with a new game plan to maybe fix the fact that teams have kind of figured us out. I wanted Sirianni fired. I've said that many, many times the past couple of weeks. But if you were going to keep Nick Sirianni, you had to surround him with adults in the room and serious offensive and defensive coaches on this staff, and that's what they've done. So hopefully, if this were to start to happen next season and some team figures out Philadelphia, there's enough experience, enough, veteran voices inside the locker room to go, hey, Nick, let's try this instead of doing the same thing over again, and then maybe we won't have that horrific 8-game skid. Now, the other interview I really enjoyed was the PHLY Sports Quick Connect with Donovan McNabb, who explained that Kellen Moore has one job as the OC this year. He's got to run the football.
You look at it because it's comparable to what Kellen Moore had in Dallas. Only thing is, now is he going to run the ball more? Because that was the whole thing why Mike McCarthy took over in Dallas, because he wanted to establish the run more. And so that was the whole thing that kind of faltered a little bit in Philly toward the end, was they kind of almost abandoned the run as much. When you got a running back that's got over 1,000 yards rushing. Like DeAndre Swift had his best year in his career. Right. And he was healthy enough where he can get out there and compete. So I think for Kellen Moore, that's something that he's going to have to take on, because this ain't Dallas and this ain't California.
Now, I agree. The question is, who's going to be running that football for Philadelphia? Could it be a shocker like Saquon Barkley or King Henry? Do you bring back DeAndre Swift? Is he just going to be a rookie? I really don't know. But whoever it is, you've got to give them the rock more often than not and make sure that you then create the boot action, play action that is so well done in Kellen Moore's offense to help Jalen Hurts and the passing attack flourish as well. Now, for what it's worth, that 1,000-yard back who toted the rock this past season, DeAndre Swift, he was on Radio Row with the Philly guys again and said he wanted to come back to Philadelphia, but also told the guys that he thinks he has a whole new level to reach in 2024.
I feel like there's a lot more in my game. A lot more in my game that I can showcase. But I feel like I showed a different element of my game this year, being able to do whatever I'm asked to do. And that was kind of my mindset going into it, not being used so much in the pass game or whatever. Try to affect the game in different ways, any way I'm asked to do, and I feel like I can do whatever I am asked to do.
It's crazy to think that Swift was a 1,000-yard back. I felt like there were so many games they just didn't utilize him. Remember week 1 where they were like, no, we're not going to run you at all. And we all said, wait, didn't you get DeAndre Swift? And then week 2 against the Vikings, it was like, oh, yeah, there's DeAndre Swift. Kellen Moore's one big problem, especially with the Dallas Cowboys, was not running the ball enough. Let's hope he's learned from his mistakes, comes over to Philadelphia, and obviously creates the incredible passing game we know and love from the Chargers, but gives us the strong running game that made Philadelphia so dominant in both 2017 and 2022, and both years where they went ahead and went to the Super Bowl. We got plenty more stuff happening next couple of days and weeks. Thank goodness the Super Bowl hype is officially over. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy the game. I'm going to take the Chiefs mainly because I like their defense and I can't stand the 49ers. Like, I really don't want the Niners to win. I'd much rather them go back to their Super Bowl and lose, meaning they haven't won a Super Bowl in a very, very long time, and give Big Red Andy Reid another Super Bowl. I know people have had a lot of conversations this week about how, oh, what if the Eagles would have kept Andy Reid? Could they have actually been, as good as the Chiefs are now? Well, would you have gotten Patrick Mahomes? That's kind of the big factor there. Andy Reid won a lot of games without Mahomes. He won a lot of Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know, I'd like to get in that whole conversation. Either way, I'm pulling for the Chiefs. I said it was going to be low scoring during our Wednesday Link Live with Josh Davis. I think I said 24-21, something like that. Neither team gets to 30 is my big prediction for this game. Let me know what you guys think and your score prediction down below. Obviously, fresh shows starting all next week as we get closer to the start of the new league year, and Philadelphia hopefully adding some more weapons on both the offensive and defensive side. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been The Thomas Mott Show.